Trump here is just simply throwing a tantrum because, number one, he was upstaged at Davos by Mark Carney's speech.
Carney made the same mistake again. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today, we've got aftermath of Donald Trump uninviting Mark Carney to his Board of Peace. Of course, CBC running coverage, bringing in professors and pundits, all calling Donald Trump crazy. More of what you'd expect. We got more from the WF. Let's jump into this. Once again, this topic here of Donald Trump uninviting Mark Carney to the Board of Peace. We've got CTV pundit Scott Reed here saying, kicked out of the League of Supervillains, thank God. Being spurned allows Carney to dodge the savage choice of saying no, or even worse, having to say yes. Exile from this shady farce as penalty for Davos is probably the best of all possible outcomes. Scott Reed, like every other liberal, likes to just keep painting Donald Trump as the supervillain when in reality we have to make a deal with the supervillain in his words. So this is just another dumb take. As you're going to see, there's a professor also saying the same sort of crap. Whether they like it or not, we have to make a deal with America. And with that, we've got Mark Carney coming out of the chateau in Quebec, his cabinet retreat, and he says that this is a boring question. Who cares?
I need to hear you talk to President Trump. Oh, that's the most boring question.
Okay, what else?
Think of a new one. What about that next comment? What about what next comment?
You can see the transcript at the bottom. Prime Minister Carney, how are your talks going with President Trump? Oh, that's the most boring question. He doesn't care. He's not going to get a deal with Trump.
Talk to President Trump. Oh, that's the most boring question.
Okay, what else?
Think of a new one.
The most boring question. Who cares? Canadians lost their jobs, went through Christmas with no job. Carney doesn't care. Carney's an absolute disaster for our country. And they did bring this up on CBC. I was wondering if they were going to talk about it or not.
And reporters tried to ask the Prime Minister for his reaction to the fact that he's been disinvited, but he did not stop to speak to reporters either. This news that he was disinvited did come quite late yesterday after this first day of the Cabinet Planning Forum had wrapped up, and the Prime Minister was actually out to dinner with his ministers and secretaries of state when that happened. I will say, though, that reporters did try to speak to Carney just before he left the Citadel here in Quebec City, where this planning forum is taking place. A question was put to him at that time about Trump, and he said something to the effect that he didn't like that question. Come up with a better question is actually what he said. And perhaps that gives you a sense of how he's feeling. It's not clear if he got ahead.
He said it was a boring question. Come up with a better question. Mark Carney's trying to deflect the fact that he was elected solely to get a deal with Donald Trump. People thought Mr. Banker could do it. He said he was the guy to do it, and now he wants a different question because he's a failure.
It's up that Trump was going to disinvite him and post this on Truth Social. That's still a question that remains out there.
I thought Trudeau was peak arrogance. Then along comes Carney. Yeah, he is peak arrogance. So to be clear, Mark Carney, you think the promise you made to Canadians to have them place their trust in you and elect you is boring. Yep, that's what he thinks. No, it's not like any concern to Canadians at all. Oh my God, yep. What's boring about U.S. relations falling apart? Yeah, that's the truth of it. That's what our entire relationship with America is falling apart because Mark Carney wants that. That's boring to him. Who cares? Carney is just so arrogant. What an arrogant arse. And Liberal supporters really think he's the man and that he actually cares about your well-being. Obviously, a bunch of people know what's going on with Carney. Unfortunately, half of Canadians who voted for him still think he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Now, we do have Kate Harrison dropping some truth bombs here on CBC.
Yeah, I think that there has always been a question around the survivability of NATO, even if you go back to Trump term number one, right, calling in everybody's delinquent tabs, and it seems to be in a more precarious position than before. But at the same time, we are in, I think, a better place today than we were yesterday or the day before in terms of, you know, the perspective of a military occupation of Greenland. And now it seems at least there's a path forward, one that NATO is a part of, and one that, you know, to use Jordan's word, looks like a de-escalation or a climb down or a shift. I think it's not Mark Carney that probably resulted in that adjustment being made. But I do think, you know, to pull on something Amanda said, I wonder how Canada's response to this might have looked tomorrow or later today if Trump had spoken first. And I think that
is such a good point. There's a lot of talk about this. If Trump had gone first, basically Carney would have still done his speech as he did, but Trump would not have been able to clap back publicly at the World Economic Forum. He would have done it in his own way. I don't know if in the grand scale of things, if it would really affect anything, Trump would still be pissed off with Carney because Carney's a jerk. He's an arrogant jerk. And whether people like Trump or not, whether the left hate him or whatever, it doesn't matter. Carney has to get a deal with him. So pissing off the guy you got to get a deal with is the dumbest strategy possible. We don't hold the power. They hold the power. This is the thing that liberals need to get through their thick skulls. We don't have the power in this situation. We have to get a deal. America doesn't have to get a deal with us.
And I think that, the message that we got from the Prime Minister yesterday looks a little bit strange compared to the situation we have now. I think the rupture that he's talking about looks more like a ripple. And when he is talking about, I
really?
absolutely do.
David Cochran, really? No, it's supposed to be a rupture. Mark Carney said it's a rupture. What a complete joke this show is. Millions of dollars of our money goes to this show, and David Cochran, oh, really? It's got to be a rupture. It's not a ripple.
I absolutely do. I think that he is right now, talking about new world orders, trying to carve out a new international way of doing things, as opposed to doing the job that he was elected to do, which is to get back to the negotiating table and get an agreement with our largest trading partner. So when we have the climb down today on Greenland, you compare that to the real cut and thrust of his remarks yesterday, which were entirely about, adjusting to a new world order in the wake of the Greenland threat and calling out the president for doing that. Well, European countries now have no new tariffs coming in on February 1st, and Canada still has ours. So how did the remarks on...
That's checkmate right there. That's the truth of it. Europe doesn't get those new tariffs, and Canada's still screwed. Of course, Mark Carney's going to say, I got the best deal in the world. We still have the best deal. It's all because of me. He's lied about it twice now. Once in the House of Commons. He's lied at a press conference. Mark Carney's a chronic liar.
Monday, tee us up to get back to the table for a discussion on trade when everything was revolved around that ostensible threat to Greenland, which now looks a lot different today than it did when Mark Carney spoke. I think that rather than the speechifying, we need to get back to the actual doing of things and the actions. And part of that is the very job that the Prime Minister was elected to do less than a year ago, which is to build out the relationship with the United States. I think the speech Monday did not help advance that objective. It got him some nice headlines. It was a well-crafted speech delivered to an audience that was primed for that message, and I give him credit for that. But there is a difference between speechifying and actually doing things. And again, I think that you compare what he said Monday to where we are today, and it looks a lot different.
She's dropping it hard here. You could hear David Cochran, right. He starts saying that when she's pushing the button too hard. She's really digging in and probably driving home to some people watching. He's got to quench that real quick. Where he jumped in there.
And actually doing things. And again,
actually doing things. And he's like, right. Because that's the truth of it. Mark Carney's not doing anything. This is all posturing. He doesn't want to push forward his agenda until he has a majority. Because then once you have a majority, Canadians can't get him out of there. And he's got 4 years to just completely ruin our country, enrich himself. Unless the Liberals revolt against him, they won't do that. They're morally bankrupt. We already know this from Trudeau's reign in power. This woman is a dishonest loser. There are so many clueless Canadians here who just are completely uneducated. It is really sad. I see a bunch of comments like this. On CBC, they bring on a professor, and well, the professors are just the same way, completely indoctrinated. I don't know why a bunch of professors in Canada are all left-wing. They lack common sense and critical thinking skills.
Diplomatic tension appears to be escalating between Prime Minister Mark Carney and U.S. President Donald Trump. Trump has just uninvited Carney from his so-called Board of Peace. The president posting about it on social media last night.
So jumping ahead here.
Deeper into this, we've reached Scott Lucas. He's a professor of international politics at University College Dublin, joining us from Wicklow, Ireland. Thank you for making the time. A lot to talk about here with this late-breaking news last night that Trump was going to withdraw his invitation to Carney to join the Board of Peace. What do you make of this move?
So let me get this straight. Mark Carney had already said, or Canada had already said, they weren't going to come to Trump's party anyway. They were washing their hair, or they had better things to do than go to effectively a symbolic event called the Board of Peace, which is more about Trump's ego than it's actually about peace. And then Trump decides, oh, I'm going to be the one that set the news agenda by saying, oh, I don't want you here anyway. I don't want you in my party. I mean, that's effectively what happened. I don't want to be too flippant about this. I think there are serious issues to discuss here, given what has happened at Davos this week, given the turmoil inside Washington domestically, as well as their foreign policy, and given the very important speech that Mark Carney made yesterday about Canadian identity and Canadian values. But Trump here is just simply throwing a tantrum because, number one, he was upstaged at Davos by Mark Carney's speech. Number two, because he had to bail out of trying to seize Greenland, in part because of the unified front of Canada and the European powers. And three, because his Board of Peace show was pretty much a flop, with only about 23 countries signing on, only 2 of them coming from Europe.
All right, so let's get the facts here straight. So the Board of Peace, yeah, a bunch of major G7 countries did not sign on to that, and probably Donald Trump feels a little embarrassed by that. That would have been a great opportunity for Carney to get some goodwill there. He didn't need to put $1 billion in. These countries can join without putting $1 billion in. That's just a lifetime membership. He could have just joined the Board of Peace, sat in a chair with all those other nations. This would have been a smart move going into CUSMA renegotiations. That's if Mark Carney has Canada's best interest at heart, which he doesn't. And you've got boneheads like this guy saying, oh, Carney upstaged him, blah, blah. Why would we want to upstage the guy we got to get a deal with? How smart is it to give a speech at your company and insult your boss? Who does that? Canadians don't want to think about it like that. But in reality, that's the truth of it. We can't survive without America, at least not right now. And that's all the liberals' fault. If we actually diversified away from 77% of our trade with America over the past 10 years, then maybe we'd be down at 50%. But either way, we still need America to survive. So until liberal voters get that through their skulls, we're going to be in trouble. And they keep bringing on woke professors to reinforce the point about how great Mark Carney did. Insulting Donald Trump in his speech isn't helping anything.
There's been a lot of talk coming out of Mark Carney's initial speech in Davos and his trip before that to China and Qatar about some of the gains that were made over the last week for Carney's administration, but also some of the damage that may have been done over the last week, particularly when it comes to his relationship with the White House, as we've been talking about over those last 2 speeches now. Canadians are hearing different signals. We have Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick spends a lot of time with Trump. We're also hearing from U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra, who is speaking with David Common. Let's just take a moment and listen to what they had to say.
They have the second best deal in the world. And all I got to do is listen to this guy whine and complain.
I think it's great that the president and the prime minister have developed a good relationship. This would be a great topic for them to get on the phone and work through it and talk through it. We've got a lot of decisions in front of us.
Okay, so sort of 2 different takeaways from all that's happened over the last week. What's your take on how much damage has been done and where the relationship sits right now?
All right, let me put this into a wider context. First of all, on the specifics. So Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, the same guy who went to Davos and said, look, NATO relies on us, the U.S. We get to say what happens, whose comments on Europe were so provocative that there was a walkout at a dinner, a walkout that included Christine Lagarde, the head of the European Central Bank. Howard Lutnick, in an administration that has shown utmost arrogance, calling Mark Carney arrogant.
Mark Carney is arrogant, and they do pay the most amount of money. They pay for well over half of NATO. Well, what is he complaining about? This is the truth. Just look at the facts. Mark Carney, Mr. Boring Question, don't care about that. Mark Carney is beyond arrogant. He's more arrogant than Justin Trudeau.
It's part of the Trump temper tantrum, and it needs to be recognized as such. In terms of the practical effect, look, that trade deal, initially NAFTA, now USMCA, it is a very important trade deal, but it's the Trump folks who have threatened to walk out on it. It's not Canada threatening to walk out on it. This is an attempt to bully the Canadians. Now, Pete Hoekstra has put a different view in that speech that you heard about, which is, look, there's a way of working together. We can make a deal. But only a few days ago, Pete Hoekstra was also saying that the U.S. doesn't need Canada. So, I think the wider context.
So maybe we shouldn't be sabotaging the very relationship we absolutely need to survive.
Next, I promise you is this. This was the week that we saw, and this was a catalytic week, when not just
a catalytic week, thanks,
Canada, but European countries effectively said that the old international order is not just damaged, it's gone, in large part because of what we are seeing in Washington, but also because of what we're seeing with the Russian invasion of Ukraine and because of the position of China. Mark Carney's trips to Qatar and China are part of the realignment that European countries are also making that involves not only China and the Gulf, but it involves India, other parts of the world, including South America, which is that the economic, political, and even military relationships have to be forged without first going to the United States and saying, how are you doing there? Because you have people in the Trump administration, not all the administration, but key players, not just Donald Trump, but J.D. Vance, the vice president, Howard Lutnick, who do not see Canada and Europe as allies.
Yeah, that's because the World Economic Forum is aligning with dictatorships like China, pushing those sustainability programs that Mark Carney and thus Canada and the European nation are pushing towards. Why are we cozying up with Xi Jinping? Things are awful in Europe. You have dangerous migrants running through the streets, terrorizing citizens. It's unbelievable. You got professors like this. This guy's teaching the youth of Ireland. This guy shouldn't be teaching anyone anything.
They see them as either potential or actual adversaries. That's why you're getting the rhetoric out of Washington, but that's why you're getting the firm line that's been taken this week by Canada and by most of the European governments. And indeed, I think this will go farther and pick up other countries as well that are saying, we don't have to bend the knee to Washington.
Yeah, so we're going to cozy up with China, guilty of human rights violations, election interference, putting illegal Chinese police stations on our soil, bounty captures, jailing citizens for free speech. That's who we're going to cozy up with because Donald Trump is such a jerk. You can't make up this level of stupidity.
Because we know that the prime minister's speech was not off the cuff. Neither of them were. They were very carefully crafted speeches aimed at, one would assume, accomplishing something in Davos. His speech drew a lot of attention, maybe not the attention that he maybe wanted to get from President Trump, or perhaps it was. What's your sense of, we talked about the damage, but the specific accomplishments or what Carney was trying to get out of it?
Well, I think this works on multiple levels. One is you have a split administration. I mean, we focused on Trump and Vance and Lutnick, but there are other officials, career officials, and I think also you might rule in possibly someone like Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, who do not want to see the U.S. trashing all its alliances. So you speak back to the United States as Europe and as Mark Carney did with the idea of, well, yeah, you know, we want to work with you, but you've sort of walked out on this. So look, let's try to reestablish what can be done. But
that's not what Carney's speech was. Don't backpedal. This is ridiculous. Carney took shot after shot at Donald Trump in America, the hegemon taking over everything. We don't have to stand with him. New world order, blah, blah, blah.
And the second part of that message is look, if this is not possible, we do have our own strengths. We do have our economic strengths. We have our political strengths. We have our cultural strengths. Part of Carney's speech yesterday. And we will build on those strengths by cooperating with others and by working.
You get real. Our cultural strengths, what, First Nations stealing taxpayers' homes in British Columbia? Is that what's going to save us? Everything is a complete joke in our country right now. The fact that this guy's putting out a message to the citizens, I mean, this is what people are watching and thinking, oh yeah, okay, this is what we're supposed to agree with now.
With others. And we'll put ourselves in a position where we are not dependent upon you. And that's a big ask. That's a huge ask. You have to reframe your economic, your political, your cultural policies. You have to reassert your values, and we are in the midst of that. In other words, those two speeches by Mark Carney are linked. The speech that went out to the international audience in Davos, and then the speech yesterday that went to Canadians, which is, we are Canadians from different backgrounds, we are very diverse, but we share this Canadian identity. So it's elbows up abroad, and it's elbows up at home as well.
I agree with that. That's what he's doing. Carney's trying to get very patriotic. We have to stand up against the evil Donald Trump. The Americans are going to take us over and steal our water. But don't worry, our European allies and now China and Qatar, that's going to make up the 77% of our trade with America. Get real. These people are delusional. They can't be this dumb. Like, I don't know what's wrong with these people. It's like they've been infected by a mind virus and they can't think with common sense. Whether they like it or not, we have to get a deal with Trump. Bring in some random professor from Ireland who holds the same values as the CBC and pushing liberal propaganda is only going to further hurt our country.